which was a continuation of what happened before. And the truth is, these things are very deep and way beyond our comprehension. So there's no point in guessing, but basing it on what it says in the Sichos, where it talks about the differences between each Rebbe. So, for example, when you talk about the first Rebbe of Chabad, the Alter Rebbe and the Mittel Rebbe, one of the differences are the Alter Rebbe is compared to Chochmah, and the Mittel Rebbe is compared to Bina. The Alter Rebbe, the difference between Chochmah and Bina is like the difference between a river and a wellspring. We had that in class before, that a wellspring is a strand of water, so to speak, that comes out of the ground. But as it keeps flowing and flowing and flowing nonstop, it starts spreading in the width and in the length. And sometimes it can go for miles and it becomes a river. So the river is huge and wide and long. And the wellspring is like almost like a seed compared to a tree. And the Alter Rebbe's Maimarim are relatively brief. The Mittel Rebbe's Maimarim are very long. I just recently was learning a Maimar from the Alter Rebbe, had to teach it somewhere. So in order to understand it better, I looked at a Maimar of the Mittel Rebbe, which explains that. The Alter Rebbe's Maimar was one page, one side. The Mittel Rebbe's Maimar was about 20 sides. So much more, explaining the same subject exactly, moving along exactly whatever it says here, it says there, but for every word here, the Tzemach Tzedek once said about the Mittel Rebbe was the father-in-law of the third Rebbe as well as the predecessor. So he said, my father-in-law used the term amach von avort akvort. It's Yiddish. Avort means one word. A quart is where you wash it, you have a whole. It's basically saying take a drop of water and it turns it into something huge. So the Mittel Rebbe used to say my marim that lasted for hours. And they were very deep. In a certain way, we can say the deepest Chassidus is found in the writings of the Mittel Rebbe. In this booklet that you have, it has a page of copies of different Sfarim that the Mittel Rebbe wrote. One of them is Imre Bina. And the Imre Bina is considered the deepest one of all the Mittel Rebbe's Maimarim. And he would say Maimarim for many hours. In fact, the Frierdiker Rebbe said that he once asked someone who lived in that generation, as far as he remembers, what was the longest Maimer that the Mittel Rebbe ever said? I guess it meant in one Shabbos. And he said the longest was 18 hours, which I guess it must mean they must have davened. After davening, continue with the Maimer. Before davening, I mean, it's only 24 hours in a day.
Wow.
So I guess it was something unusual, and the Hasidim were able to keep up with it. That's another thing. It was a different generation. So the Mittel Rebbe was known for this, and it was known for his passion for Chassidus. So we have the famous quote from the Tzemach Tzedek, that Tzemach Tzedek said, my father-in-law, by him Chassidus wasn't just something he was passionate about, but this gave him literally life. And he used the words that if somebody would cut his finger, not blood would be flowing, but Chassidus would be flowing, because that became his physical life. And one of the things that sort of testifies to this was when he was arrested. We know that Shabbos, the 9th of Kislev, is when he was born and passed on that same day. And on the 10th of Kislev, he was released from jail. Why was he in jail? Not because he passed a red light, but because there were false accusations against him. And this was done by people who opposed Chassidus. Yeah. People opposed Chassidus. Thank you very much. So anyone else need or everyone has it ready? Okay, I'll take one myself. People opposed Chassidus, and they found a way to find some false accusation against him, and they got him arrested, and they were hoping that, being that he's the leader of the Chassidus, if they would, God forbid, eliminate him, that they would eliminate Chassidus, but Baruch Hashem, there was a miracle, and that didn't happen. So The Frierdiker Rebbe was arrested for that reason. And guess what? While he was in jail, the authorities allowed him that 3 times a week he could say a Maimer Chassidus for his students. How did that happen? Because he had a doctor. The Mitzvah Rebbe was always physically not so well. He was, I think, born with a condition with a certain weakness in his heart and his lungs. And there were a few times, things that happened that he fainted, his life was in danger. So he had a doctor. Now this doctor was also a doctor for people that were in the government, like people in the royal family. They all knew him. Dr. Heidenthal was his name. And he came to the authorities and testified that the Mittler Rebbe is a person that lives by Chassidus. And therefore, just like anyone who's in jail is entitled to have food and drinks and whatever it is to sustain him, he needs Chassidus to sustain him. That's his food and his drinks. So they must give him permission to say a mimer. So 3 times a week while he was in jail, he would say a mimer. They allowed 50 Chassidim to come in to listen. Naturally, everybody wanted to go in, so they used to draw lots. Whoever went in one time didn't go in the next time. And all through the time that he was in jail, he was saying Maimarim. Why? Because the doctor testified this to him is like food to the average person. That was his life. So when the Alter Rebbe was Nastalik and the Mittler Rebbe took over the leadership, in those days, things were very different than today. In those days, the opposition against Hasidus was so much more severe and serious, much more than today. And there was actually organized committees because they had this notion that Hasidus is a movement against Judaism. So it was organized committees how to fight Hasidim and Hasidus. So when the Alter Rebbe was nostalgic, basically, they had meetings and they came to the conclusion the Alter Rebbe was a very powerful, dynamic leader. And under his leadership, thousands of people became Chassidim, in spite of all the opposition. The Mittler Rebbe was known as more of a softer person. And he doesn't have these dynamic leadership qualities. That's what they thought. And therefore, now is the time to launch a real aggressive attack against Chassidus, and we can crush it once and for all. That was the plan. This information came back to the Mittler Rebbe, and so as a result of that, he instituted 2 things. One was that he's not allowing Hasidim to daven in the shul where there are people there from the opposition. Once he heard that they're just out to crush and to fight and to destroy, so there's no point in sort of allowing yourself to become subject to that. So he said that they should not go daven in those shuls, not come in contact with each other because it'll just become an explosion. The second thing he said, he charged every chassid with a responsibility that whoever comes to the city of Lubavitch and hears chassidus from the Mittler Rebbe, when he goes back home, wherever he passes, every city, he should go into the shul, and in that shul, he should give over the teachings of chassidus that he heard in Lubavitch. What did he accomplish with this? 2 things. Number one, he prevented fighting and conflict and controversy because he didn't allow them to sort of meet and clash. And the second thing was he publicized Hasidus in a way like never before because every single young man who came from Lubavitch had to stop off in every single place where he passed to give over the Hasidus. So the first year that he became a Rebbe, 15,000 people became Chassidim. In spite of all the threats and all the launching of attacks, that's what happened. So in that time, there are 2 stories that are found that I know of that relates to that time period. One was with the chassid, his name was Rabbi Yitzchak Moshe of Yassi. Yassi is a city in Romania. And he was a chassid of the Alter Rebbe. He was a young man at that time, but then he became a chassid of the Mittler Rebbe. Even in the times of the Alter Rebbe, he was one of the prominent chassidim. He was involved in printing the Tanya. So he did what the Mittler Rebbe said. He was traveling, stopped off in a city called Apta, and in that city, he gave over Chassidus. While he was giving over Chassidus, the Rebbe from that city walked in. His name was the Apta Rav. He was a student of the Maggid, which means a colleague of the Alter Rebbe. much older than the Mitzvah Rebbe, and older than this chassid. He was from the previous generation, but he was one of those Rebbes that were strongly opposed spreading Chassidus. As you know, that the Alter Rebbe spread Chassidus the way he did, but the other students of the Maggid did not agree. They felt that the Chassidus in-depth learning is only for the Rebbe, and the Chassidim will be inspired by the Rebbe, but they themselves shouldn't learn Chassidus in-depth. Now, you might see things differently because a lot of things have changed. But in essence, even today, there is a big difference. Other Chassidim study very little Chassidus, not a lot. And here, he looks that a person comes into his shul, where he's the sort of the Rav of the place, and he's giving up Chassidus, the Alter Rebbe style, which goes against him. And he got very upset. So again, we're talking about a tzaddik here. It's not just ordinary people. And he said, Hagam lirbesh hamalka ini babayis. This is a phrase from the Megillah. You're trying to conquer my queen in my house? This is what Achashverosh said to Haman when he fell on Esther. He said, you come to my shul and you're giving over Chassidus, which goes against my opinion? And he cursed that he shouldn't live till the end of the year. I know it sounds shocking, and I'm not sure how to explain it. I think the explanation would be that there is a halacha with a king, that a person who does something against a king is the punishment for it is death penalty according to Torah, even if it's a minor little thing. And I guess, I mean, he didn't chas v'shalom do anything physically, but being that this was his place where he was spiritually the king, man malki rabbanim. The Gemara says, who are the kings? The rabbanim. He was the king in this place, and here's a person that rebelled against him in his place. So that was the punishment. Now he knew that this is a big tzaddik, and he knew that what comes out of his mouth is very powerful. So he picked himself up and he went straight back to Lubavitch, came to the Mitzvah Rebbe, and he said, this is what happened. And he gave him that curse, and he's asking the Mitzvah Rebbe to save him. So the Mitzvah Rebbe said to him, and that's all that happened? He meant to say, did you answer him? Were you disrespectful? He said, not a word. I had no idea that this is his place. And I had no idea that this is offending him. And I did it innocently. So the Mitzvah Rebbe leaned on his head like this for a few moments. And then he said, don't worry, you'll outlive him. So he said, Rebbe, he's an older person. I need a better bracha than that. So he leaned on his head again. He said, you'll outlive his children. So the Rebbe's children aren't so young either. I need a better bracha than that. So then he said, he'll outlive his grandchildren. So this chassid lived to the age of 104. Until the last day of his life, he was pasking shailas, he was answering, teaching chassidus. He was in perfect health until the last day of his life. So this was from that time period. Another story is also a very famous quote from the Mitzvah Rebbe. The Rebbe uses this often. Was that there was a chassid, a young man, that was very articulate. When he came to a place and he gave over chassidus, it was so inspiring that many people became attached to chassidus through him. On one hand, that's amazing. Isn't that what the point is all about? On the other hand, chassidus is very much against yeshus, very much against sort of feeding the ego. So he felt that this is not healthy for me spiritually. It makes me feel good about myself, and that's not a good thing. So he came to the Mitzvah Rebbe, and he told him what's happening, and he said, I'd like to stop because I see that it's making me feel more of self-important, makes me feel better about myself in a negative way, more arrogant. So the Mitzvah Rebbe said to him in Yiddish, which means even if you turn into an onion, you'll continue spreading chassidus. Which means you're turning into an onion. It's sort of bringing down your spiritual level that you would like to be at. But through this, you're inspiring so many Yidden. So that's what you got to do. The Rebbe used the term regarding today, shlichus. When you go out on shlichus, it's similar that you go out on shlichus. You don't have enough time for your own spiritual growth. And a lot of things are happening that normally you would never be there, but you're doing it because that's the only way to reach out to people who are on the outside. So the answer is, why does an onion have the merit to be mentioned in such a respectful way? Why an onion? So Some people say because an onion has a lot of shells, a shell in Chassidus is klipa, has a lot of klipas to it. I think the Rebbe once said that an onion grows with its head in the ground. All the vegetables, the head is outside of the ground. So obviously, that's the Indian with an onion. So he said to him, an onion is also daran, a chassid is also chazan. So that first year, as a result of this effort that everybody should spread chassidus and nobody should engage in controversy, just don't go there. Through that alone, there were 15,000 people that became chassidim just the first year alone. And after that, many more. The amount of chassidim that became chassidim during the Mitzvah Rebbe's lifetime was enormous. I remember when the Rebbe introduced something new to print a Paketanya. There was no such thing before, Paketanya. And it was a sefer like any other sefer. So the Rebbe said one of the things about why a Paketanya. He said he's traveling on the train or on the bus, and someone starts a conversation with you about Chassidus, and they have this question, they have that question, they have another question. So you say to them, come, let's forget about the questions. Let's just learn Tanya. Pull out the packet Tanya, start learning, and you'll see that all the questions will disappear. Basically, that's what the Bittul Rebbe said. Don't get involved in controversy, don't get involved in arguing, but learn Chassidus, just spread Chassidus, and you'll see that light will attract people to the teachings of Chassidus. And if you look at the back over here, so you see this book which is called Imre Bina. That's the one that I told you is the deepest sefer. Underneath is a book called Shari Oira, the Gates of Light. That's a sefer that deals with Hanukkah. On the other side is a book called Ateres Reish. That's a sefer that deals with Rosh Hashanah. And on top of the page on the left side is a very sefer called Derech Chaim. That's a very a sefer which is very strong in terms of demanding of a person to take an account and self-reflect. So this is a sefer Chassidim would study before going to bed, making a cheshbon hanefesh. In fact, the Friedrich Rebbe writes that this Mittel Rebbe, a lot of the things he said, and then he wrote them down. This he never said, because it talks about such things about how a person could fall low, that if the Mittel Rebbe would say it, his health wouldn't be able to tolerate it. So he could only write it, he didn't say it. Kokei Chibrim is really a very unusual sefer. It's in Yiddish. And it was written for a specific chassid who became a Baal Tshuva. And in the introduction to the sefer, they have the story how it happened that he became a Baal Tshuva. And the whole sefer is how he should conduct himself in the process of tshuva. Pirush Hamilas means that it explains the words of davening. And the thing about the Mittel Rebbe, which is also unique, is that his day of passing and the day of birth is the same day. And the Gemara says that by certain selected tzaddikim, there's a pasuk where it says that the days of tzaddikim are tmimim, are complete, meaning to say that just like their spiritual life was complete, was perfect, that's how chronologically the amount of years that they lived, the amount of it was exactly punct, a perfect circle. He was born on Tes Kislev, and he was a stalik 54 years later on the same day, Tes Kislev. Where do we find this? We find it by Moshe Rabbeinu. He was born on Zayin Adar, and he passed on Zayin Adar. We find it by the others. It says they were born on Pesach, and they were in a stalik on Pesach. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And there were other tzaddikim. There's a very interesting thing about the Rambam. The Rambam lived to the age of 70, but he wasn't born and passed away on the same day. He was born, anyone know when he was born? Erev Pesach. He passed away on the 20th day of Teves. So the Chidah says something really fascinating, that if you count the amount of days from the from the 20th of Tevis until Erev Pesach. How many days are there? There's exactly 83 days left. In other words, if you would have lived another 83 days, it would have been a perfect 70 years. But he didn't. But the Rambam writes that his Sefer Yad HaChazaka, which is 14 volumes, but the Rambam writes it has 83 categories of halacha altogether. So he writes that the 83 categories of halacha of the Rambam completed those 70 years, and he lived the perfect 70 years. Anyway, so this is unique about the Mittel Rebbe, and there's so much more we can say about it. So I hope you'll read these articles here. First of all, you have the story, why he was arrested, how he was arrested, how it was different than the Alter Rebbe's arrest. But one thing is very interesting. There, the Rebbes of Chabad, by the way, were all arrested. The Alter Rebbe was arrested, the Mittel Rebbe was arrested. What about the Tzemach Tzedek? He wasn't arrested in a jail, but he was arrested in what we call house arrest. But because he had a very strong stand against certain things, against the government, they arrested him. Means that he was restricted to his home. There were guards outside, nobody can go in or out, so he was called house arrest. The Rebbe Marash was house arrested. The Rebbe Rashab was house arrested. And the Frierdiker Rebbe, he was arrested in actual jail, which was probably the worst of all the Rebbes, the most difficult in the communist regime. So there was, and the Frierdiker Rebbe, by the way, was arrested 7 times. First arrest was when he was 11 years old, started his career, and the 7th time was when he was 11 years old, and he defended a Jew from a Russian policeman. So they arrested him, and then they were able to prove that this Russian policeman was actually corrupt, and he got out of jail. But when he was arrested with the famous story of Yud Beis Tammuz, that was the 7th arrest. So I heard this from someone who was there by the table when it happened. It was Yud Beis Tammuz here in America, and the Friedrich had a Farbrengen, and there was an older chassid sitting there, and he said, I have to just preface it by saying there's a term in halacha, which is in Aramaic, mirzik yuhara. It says about certain things, it's the right thing to do, but not for everybody. And if you do it, it's like you're showing off. Mirzik yuhara. So certain things, says in Shulchan Aruch, a person, an ordinary person, shouldn't do it because it looks like you're boasting and showing off, like you're on that high level. So that's all the chassid said to the Frierdiker Rebbe. I see that all the Rebbes of the Chabad managed to get themselves arrested. But 7 times, that's already showing off. That's already mirzik. Why were they arrested? Because they went to the end. There was nothing that stopped them. Something had to be done, was done. And therefore, the authorities came after them. So all 3, the Alter Rebbe and the Mittel Rebbe and the Frierdiker Rebbe, they were all literally in jail. Their release from jail was all 3 was connected to the words Pada V'Shalom Nafshi. So during this time of the year, you'll hear people singing it a lot. It's chapter 55 in Tillim. The Alter Rebbe writes, as I was saying Tillim, and I said those words, I was informed that they're releasing me from jail. Why was he saying Tillim on that day? It was the 19th of Kislev, and that's the 10th of Kislev, the 10th of the month. So it says that the Rebbes of Chabad would always say Tillim according to the days of the month, not the days of the week. The Tillim is divided in 3 ways. First of all, there's 5 Sfarim. Then there's 30 parts corresponding to each day of the month. And then there is 7 parts corresponding to each day of the week. That even though generally we only say the one for the month, but if there's some sort of a crisis, then we also add, the Rabbeim would add the one for the week. So Pada V'Shalom is in Tuesday. That's when it happened on a Tuesday. The Mittel Rebbe actually happened on the 10th day of the month. That's when you say Pada V'Shalom. And by the previous Rebbe, it also happened on the Tuesday that he was released from jail, and it was connected to saying the pasuk Pada V'Shalom Nafshi. So a lot of the Maimarim and Chassidus on Yud Kislev and Tes Kislev, they all start with the words Pada V'Shalom Nafshi and explaining what does it mean. So here you'll have details of the story of his arrest, details of the stories of his passing, and details of the story of his birth, what happened when he was born. And this is just years ago, when things weren't printed, this is just what you get an idea what it looked like, the pages looked like. The Chassidus was written and they made copies of it. Okay, so I don't want to keep this until 10 o'clock, but maybe a few more minutes. Let me learn what it says inside, but with the understanding that we'll continue and explain it better next week. So we're at the bottom of the page, and we'll start with 2, 4, 5 lines from the bottom. And therefore, after everything's said, a person should be extremely careful to eat with the right intention, that it should enable him to daven and to learn. It shouldn't be just to satisfy the desires and the lusts of his heart, but it should be purposeful, it should be meaningful, that through this I'll have strength to serve Hashem. What happens when he eats with the wrong intention, just for the sake of pleasure? First of all, the person sort of goes down in level. He was a medaber, he was belonged to the category of medaber, which is the highest category. That's above tzemeach, plants, and above chai, which is animals. And now he's becoming lamata mahem, sharehu mikabu mahem. Look what's happening. I now become the recipient, and they become the provider. They're giving me chayis. An animal and a piece of corn is giving me chayis. So basically, I'm lowering myself to become a recipient for something which is even lower than me. There's another point. It's even lower than that. It says in Tanya that food is something which is klipas noga, which means it has a mixture of good and klipa. But when I eat food with the wrong intention, I'm actually causing it to go down even lower to the place and the realm of gimel klipas atmeis, which are totally klipa. Of course, it's something which is reversible. Ada sheyoshu, turn the page. If I do tshuva and I go back to serve Hashem with it, I could elevate it. Like all this is explained in Tanya, Perek Zayin. So what we need to go into, which we'll do that in Mitzvah next week, is so what does it mean? I mean, you can't sit down by the table and eat food that you enjoy, cook food that you enjoy, cook for your family, or you're supposed to make sure there's no salt, no pepper, no spices, it shouldn't taste good. Doesn't sound like that's the way people are living today. On the other hand, look what it says here. So we have to understand that even though Torah never changes, and of course whatever it says here is emes in all times, but the world and people have changed. We're definitely different than we were, the people were generations ago, and therefore things apply to ourselves differently. And to use as an example, years ago, people would often fast as a way of tshuva. We know what it says in Tanya. In the third volume of Tanya, Ageres HaTshuva, about fasting, how this is able to bring a complete tshuva to a person. Today, not only we don't engage in fasting, it's actually prohibited. It's a time that in the Sichos of the Rebbe, the letters of the Rebbe is against fasting. The Rebbe told people not to fast. And why is that? Because today, when a person will fast more than those that were obligated according to halacha, they'll make us weaker. The whole purpose of fasting is to make us stronger spiritually. Today, by fasting, it'll actually make us weaker spiritually, because it makes us weak. We don't feel good. You can't dedicate yourself to learning and davening, doing other things. You get into a mood which is not the best of moods because you haven't eaten. And as a result of that, you're trying to fast to enhance your spirituality, But we are in a place that by us fasting will actually bring us down spiritually. Why is that? Just because that's the way people are today. We're weaker than what they used to be then. What? I can't hear you. No, so obviously those things which are halacha, like Yom Kippur, Tisha B'Av, and all the days that we're supposed to fast. What I'm talking about is additional fast that people took upon themselves in addition to what we're obligated to do in halacha. Those additional fasts we don't do today, but whatever is required according to halacha. You should know there are communities where women in the community, who because they're not as strong as the men physically, and because they have to be busy with raising the children, doing whatever they do, that they actually discourage women from fasting except for Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur. All the other fast day, in a lot of communities, women don't fast. And of course, someone who has a certain physical weakness, not only doesn't have to fast, shouldn't be allowed to fast because it does more damage than good. So I'm using this as an example that it could be something that years ago was a very special thing. It enhanced a person's spirituality. And today it brings us down. So this will be something which can apply to this discussion as well. That today things are different. And actually, if a person would deprive themselves of the most basic sort of pleasures in life, it would actually do more damage to us than good, because that's the world we live in. In other words, certain things which years ago would have been considered luxuries, a lot of those things today are basics. To explain that better, I'll give you a little break now, give myself a break. We'll continue next week. Have a good Shabbos, everybody.
Good Shabbos. Thank you, Rabbi.
Good Shabbos. What? Right. So being I'm eating on Shabbos because of the pleasure, because of Shabbos, that's L'Shem Shamayim. Yes, because it is the L'Shem Shamayim, and Hashem wants us to have pleasure on Shabbos.
But there still probably is probably still not she probably still.
Right. There's a difference between having pleasure, like we said the other day, and indulging in physical pleasure. There's a big difference between that. And the indulging part does apply today. But enjoying basic physical things that people normally enjoy is, we'll talk about it next week. And you can think about it over the weekend. A lot of those things are no longer in the category like some extra pleasure that I'm just sort of pampering myself. It's more about, this is just the way our standards of living. It's different.
I sent a couple books up extra. You got them?
What?
A couple books I sent up?
Yeah, I got it and I gave it out. Thank you.
Thank you.